Et nyt madværksted, et såkaldt Fødevare Living Lab, åbner i dag. Bag madværkstedet står Syddansk Universitet og Kolding Kommune og er en del af EU-projektet Food2030, der skal skubbe vores fødevarer i en mere bæredygtig retning. Madværkstedet er i praksis et stort køkken og en del af kultur- og medborgerhuset R10 i Riberdyb. Planen er, at forskere, kokke og andre aktører inden for fødevarebranchen kan benytte stedet til at eksperimentere med bæredygtig mad på forskellige vis.
Well, the Fødevare project is an EU project, and 12 European cities are all trying to understand what will it take to transform our food systems. So Kolding is one of those cities, and in Kolding we call the Fødevare project Food2030 in Kolding, and the municipality and SDU are working together really closely, making living labs to try to understand what can we do to change.
And you want to involve the citizens. How will you involve the citizens?
We're hoping to involve everyone who eats. So if you think about that, of course, all people eat, but we also have more than humans. So behind us, for example, you can see we're putting in a Wildflower garden, and that's a restaurant for pollinators, because pollinators need to eat too. But if we look at the human food system, we can look at distribution, we can look at waste, we can look at actually the food choices that we make as families and as businesses, and we can look at the laws that we make. There are so many things to consider if we want a sustainable food system. So Fødevare or Food2030 in Kolding will consist of 37 different living labs spread around the city, working with the cafeterias, working with farmers, working with the markets, working with families, working with businesses, working with everybody who has a stake in the food system being sustainable, and that's everybody.
And can you give an example of how maybe involving families? How you've been doing that?
We're involving families in a number of different ways. So one of the really important things that we're doing is we're opening Food Lab. And Food Lab is at Bæredygtig in Kolding, right near the old town, in the center of town. And you can come down and you can do workshops here. And today we have 4 different workshops, for example.
And you're looking into sustainable foods. Can you give some examples of what sustainable foods are?
So if you think about the workshops that we're doing today, one of them, the one that's going on right now, is looking at food waste and how food waste can be used to make packaging. And when we think about waste, there's so much waste. One of the guests that's here today was saying that they're visiting from the United Kingdom, and they've come for the event, and at the hotel people filled their plates up and then left uneaten food on the table. And these are not sustainable choices. So we need to think about how sustainable the foods themselves are. Are they local? Are they, for example, do they use pesticides that damage the pollinators, that disrupt the whole ecosystem? What kind of impact, larger term, do our foods have? Many of the foods in the supermarket, we don't even know where they come from. When we look at the labeling, the country of origin is not listed. So it's hard for people to make these choices. So we want to create lots of different workshops for people to come together and try to find better ways of supporting families to make healthy food choices.
And you did mention packaging here. So how will packaging be sustainable in the future then, or could be?
Well, packaging is really interesting when we think about it because of the laws we have to keep organic food separate from non-organic food. It's all wrapped in plastic. And many packaged foods, they don't have a good shelf life and they need to be thrown out in ways that are different. And actually, another thing that's here at Bæredygtig, we share the building with a number of different organizations and groups, and one of them is Food Reformers. And they've put in a fridge here at Bæredygtig called skubbe. And they they go to different businesses. They have agreements with supermarkets and businesses to get surplus food. So surplus food is food that's still good to eat. It hasn't gone past its use-by date, but it's going to be thrown out because it doesn't have long enough left before it can be sold. So Food Reformers collects this food, puts it in the fridge, and people can come and take it for free. So instead of throwing the food out, this is a great way of thinking about dealing with the food, and that's something that comes directly from packaging. When we go back to the packaging itself, a lot of food is still in plastic, but more and more we're seeing mushroom-based packaging and packaging based using bioplastics made from coffee grounds left over from the cafe or from breakfast.
And then today you also have a workshop about creating wildflowers. Can we hear a bit about that as well?
Behind me, we have a workshop where they're putting in a wildflower bed that's especially for pollinators. There's a bed of food for humans and a bed of food for pollinators. And the purpose of this is to try to learn what plants pollinators enjoy and need and like, and how to gather more of them around us. And it's part of a larger citizen science project where if you sign up for the project, we will send you the seeds to plant your own wildflower garden. And we want to create a series of wildflower gardens all over Kolding and connect the people who are doing this so that together we can see, are there more bees? Are there more butterflies? Are we encouraging the wildlife to flourish and creating good conditions for the wildlife?
And you're already talking about the bees and the butterflies now, but you also have an insect hotel. So what is that about?
Well, the bees and the butterflies and all of the insects, they need somewhere to live as well. So if we think about our wildflower garden as their restaurant, we're putting in a mini Miyawaki school. It's a particular kind of forest invented by a Japanese man called Miyawaki. And in this forest, it's very diverse planting that comes together and it creates a perfect place for pollinators. So that's our hotel that the pollinators will come and they'll visit, and they've got a restaurant nearby so they can eat. And it's part of telling a really nice story that I hope can get other people excited to make their own hotels for pollinators and insects to come and visit, and restaurants for them to have plenty to eat when they come around.
And then you also have something on aquaponics and mental health. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Absolutely. One of my students, Michela Antonelli, is running a workshop this afternoon that looks at aquaponics in small spaces as a way of engaging with your mental health. And she's asking some really great research questions to try to understand, aquaponics involves fish and plants, and it creates a closed nutrition system. And by caring for the fish and caring for the plants and caring for the soil and trying to understand how this system works to have the aquaponics system flourish, she's trying to understand, does this make a difference to mental health? And she's coming from a great position to ask these questions because she comes from Italy, where she had a house and a big garden, and where her family grew all of their vegetables in the garden. And so she was used to having that. And then as a student, many students come to Kolding. They live in small apartments, and it's a very different kind of lifestyle. And your mental health is different when you're outside and you have your hands in the soil or you're enjoying nature in different ways than it is if you're in a very small space and just studying and working hard and forgetting to go outside and forgetting to do those nice things. So with the aquaponics and mental health workshop, it's really trying to understand, can caring for nature help make us better as well? Can caring for nature care for us? Because we are nature too. We're not separate from nature. We are part of nature, just like everything else that's growing around us.
Det er i Rib og Dyb, at man finder R10, og herinde sker der altså en masse ting i dag. De har åbnet huset op for borgerne, der kan komme ind og få en god snak med dem og blive lidt klogere på det hele.